Warning: the interview you're about to experience has already positively changed people's lives. If applied appropriately, it can change yours too. The views expressed are those of the guest and host. The content of this podcast is not meant to be legal, financial, or medical advice. Warning: this episode may contain graphic details of the guest's life. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey, Lion, how are you today, brother?
I am great, David. Really good to see you.
Oh, it's great seeing you. And for our listeners all over the world, welcome to the Remarkable People podcast. We can't wait to share this episode with you with our friend Lion. And Lion, for people all over the world listening, different demographics, different countries, different backgrounds, if they stick through this entire episode, they're going to hear a story. They're going to hear a bunch of tips and tricks to make their lives better. But what is one thing you guarantee them that if they stay through this episode, they're going to walk away with today?
They're going to understand how their beliefs are impacting their life.
Yes, and that's huge. And you and I will talk about it later in the conversation. We actually had a meeting and a session to try to kind of understand what you do, and it was great. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick affiliate break. You're going to get an offer that is truly remarkable, and then we're going to come back with our remarkable friend, Lion Goodman.
Hey, friend, this is Dave Pasquale, and I was just thinking about construction zones and how all of our lives and businesses sometimes are booming, and there's other times where it's like near disaster, about to go out of business, tons of construction going on and chaos. I wanted to tell you about a friend of mine named Jeff Gervais. Jeff is with Excel Your Revenue. He owns it. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's taken many service-based businesses from zero to profitable, whether it's his own or his clients. And I've been working with him as a web developer, and then we become friends. And then I've also talked to other clients that he's worked with who are on the verge of bankruptcy after 50 years in business. And he teaches them for the first time how to really understand the business model and pricing, their numbers, and how to, within no joke, 3 to 6 months, turn a company around, make it profitable. Instead of having a war zone and danger zone behind them, now they have blue skies and they're planning vacations. So I'm David Pasquale, but this is a short video testimonial from my friend Jeff Gervais of Excel Your Revenue, where if you have a service-based business, he has a free 30-minute consult. He also has other options available on his website, excelyourrevenue.com. As a friend to you, as a friend to Jeff, I highly recommend you two meet. And if there's nothing there, there's nothing there. You spent 10 minutes on the phone maybe, but go to excelyourrevenue.com/webinar DP. So excelyourrevenue.com/webinar DP. And you can set up a free consultation with Jeff, see what he has to offer. He gives you free training in that class. That alone should help you be a powerful catalyst. Enjoy, God bless, and let me know how it goes.
All right, Lion, we're back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to hear Lion's story. So, Lion, we don't want to ever dwell in the past, but everything that's happened to us makes us the men and women we are. So, good, bad, or ugly, where did your life start? And take us through chronologically.
Well, I was born at a very early age. How I like to start. Fairly normal childhood, not a lot going on. The first big thing that happened to me is that I thought there was something wrong with me because I wasn't very social with other kids. I looked at them and they looked normal. They looked like they belonged in their body and that they were friends with each other. And I was always a bit of an outsider. So as an outsider, I became an observer. I was observing human behavior from a very young age. And I got interested in psychology and neurology in elementary school and junior high school. And so I began asking the questions like, who am I? What am I doing here? What are we doing here? Why do we do the things we do? Why do those people behave like that? And so that curiosity led me to a degree in consciousness studies at the University of Colorado in 1975, which will give you some idea of how old I am.
You look
And
great, man. I thought we were the same age, so that's fantastic.
thank you. Thank you. This is what it looks like when you take good care of yourself. And so I've had really a 45-year study and practice of human nature, human psychology, What are we doing here? Who are we? And how does the mind work? That's been my primary driver for understanding. And so I've taken more than 100 workshops and trainings. And all during that time, I found that most of them didn't have much impact. Like I'd go to a workshop and then 2 days later, I felt the same as I did before the workshop. So, and I think most people have had that experience of, going to a therapist. You feel good for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or a couple of hours, and then you feel the same crappy way you did before. So I was looking for what are the things that actually work, that create permanent change. And I had many of those experiences as well, where the next day I was a different person. And so I dove into that particular topic and found out, what does it take to create permanent transformational change? And that's the business I'm in now.
Beautiful. So on your journey, you were just wired since a child to kind of think differently and you were intrigued with the human mind. What are some of the things you found along the way that helped you realize like there's a lot more to this than the average mainstream human knows?
Well, first of all, we walk around with this assumption about ourselves and about the world and about other people. For example, we think that other people are like us, but in fact, every individual is completely unique. The brain is the most complex thing we know of in the universe, and every brain is different than every other brain. And so the assumptions that we have, the way we grew up, the beliefs that we took on about ourselves and other people and the world, those drive us. They're in the subconscious mind, and we actually perceive through them like lenses that we look through. And so, what I found is that the real best leverage for personal change, transformational change, is those lenses we're looking through. If you're looking through green sunglasses and you change them for yellow sunglasses, the world looks different. And our beliefs are those sunglasses that we look through. So when we begin to examine, like, how did I get this belief about myself? Like, there's something wrong with me, or I can't do it, or I'm no good. Where did those beliefs come from and why are they there? So that's been my primary focus, is because that's where the real leverage is. If we can change those beliefs that were formed early in life, then you can change everything. You can change who you are, how you show up, the kinds of relationships you have, your success in the world. That's the best leverage point for human change.
Yeah, and I think every human on the planet has struggles or doubts or, inner conflict, so to speak. So when you were growing up, what was one of those conflicts that you're like, no, this isn't true. I'm changing my belief.
Well, I was born into a Jewish family and attended Jewish Saturday school. We called it religious school. I went all the way through ninth grade, and in ninth grade we studied all the religions of the world. And I suddenly realized, oh my God, they're all saying the same thing. There isn't one that's better than the other. There's not one that has the truth, even though they claim it's the truth. If what do they have in common? And what they had in common were the virtues. Like, oh, everybody's looking at the virtues, what it takes to be a good person, what it takes to be a bad person. And the virtues are those qualities that create happiness in ourselves and in others and in our community and in the world. So love, wisdom, care, uh, compassion. These are common throughout all the religions. And I realized that I was more of a universalist, even though I didn't know what that meant, that we're all the same people. We have different belief systems. And so that was another piece of the puzzle. It's like, why do we get those beliefs? Why do we walking around with those beliefs that my God is better than your God? Or, my God can beat up your God. So it made me realize that we're all the same. We're both human and we're also divine. We all have that divine spark in us. And so at one level we're gods because we create our own reality. And another level we're servants of God. We're just here to make the world a better place.
So now you're in college, you graduate. Where does your life go from there?
Well, when I graduated with a degree in consciousness studies, nobody was hiring people with degrees in that field because I created it as far as I know. I don't know of anybody that got an earlier degree in consciousness than I did. And so I was kind of lost. I didn't know what to do. And so I became a traveling salesman. And I took jewelry and gift items from some different suppliers, and I went on the road and sold stuff to stores for about a year and a half. And during that time, I would stop and help people whose car had broken down on the road. And because I was a good Samaritan, just helping people along the way. And one day I was traveling between Las Vegas and LA, going through the Mojave Desert. And there was a guy whose car had broken down in the middle of the desert. It was about 110 degrees outside. So I stopped and rolled down my window and I said, can I help you? And he said, oh, I don't know. I just put $200 into her and she won't start and I don't know what to do. And I said, well, I'm heading into LA. Do you want to ride? And he looked at me kind of funny and he went, yeah, okay. And he brought his duffel bags and suitcases and stuff into my van. I was driving around this RV style van. And he ended up traveling with me for 3 days. And I grew to trust him, sent him on errands, wash up the car, gas up the car. And then the third night, we were camped out in the middle of nowhere east of LA. And I was in the back of the van moving stuff around in a kind of a crouch position. He was in the front of the van. Suddenly, there was an explosion and something hit me in the head. And I thought maybe the gas stove exploded. And I looked up and it was intact. Then I looked to my left and there he was with a gun pointed at me from the front seat. And I realized I'd been shot. And that was a big surprise. And so I was so shocked. I said, "Are you shooting at me?" And he said, "Shut up, just shut up." And so I thought, okay, well, maybe he's warning me. He wants to warn me that he's gonna steal my stuff and he'll put me outside naked. And that's okay, because at least I'll be alive. And then he shot again. And I realized he's not warning me, he's gonna kill me. I was 26 years old. I'd studied these spiritual disciplines, kind of a lost hippie salesman on the road, and here I am going to be dead. So what do you do when you know your life is over? I didn't want to die angry. I had studied death and dying, so I knew enough about it that I said, okay, I don't want to die angry. I don't want to die upset. I want to die in peace and love. And so I began to pray and I reached up to Source and I said, coming home, get ready, here I come. And I also went back through the past to forgive all those who had hurt me and to ask forgiveness of all those who I had hurt. And I did that. It was kind of like a fast reverse movie reel throughout my life. And then I just fell into this peaceful, loving state. And he shot again, third time. The second and third bullets missed me, but I was now floating above my body, looking down at my body in the van, and this little scene taking place, kind of like looking down at a dollhouse, and feeling peace and feeling this golden honey light filling me, and I was just ready to go to whatever was next. And then he shot a fourth time, and my head was thrown violently to the side. Blood was draining out of my head, and I was suddenly back in my body. And I thought, that's weird. I'm supposed to be out of my body. It's like I was already out of my body, ready to go the distance, but now I'm back in my body and I'm bleeding. And having studied my body and physiology and anatomy, and psychology, I was kind of checking everything. So I thought the bullet had gone through my brain. I ought to be missing something. But I felt intact. And so eventually I went, well, okay, here I am. And I picked up my head and I turned and I looked at him to my left. And he looked at me and he freaked out. And he jumped up and he said, "Why are you dead, man? You're supposed to be dead." And I just looked at him and said, well, here I am. I didn't know the answer to that question. And at that point, he said, "Why aren't you dead? I shot you 4 times, man. And why aren't you dead?" And again, no answer to that, just here I am. And then he suddenly shifted and he started getting concerned and he kind of came over to me and he said, "Does it hurt?" And I realized that he had shifted from, wanting to be a killer to caring. And so I very quietly, I knew enough about psychology that I spoke to him very slowly and carefully. And I said, "Well, maybe I'm not supposed to die." And he said, yeah, but I shot you, man. I shot you 4 times. And I said, well, here I am. And so he was kind of looking at me, looking at the blood that was all over and saying, why aren't you dead? I shot you. And I just said, maybe this isn't my time. So we had some more dialogue, and then he suddenly said, okay, man, I'm going to take you to the hospital I know. And I thought that was a really good idea.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Now, he shot you in the head, in the body. Where were you
Yeah,
shot?
4 shots to the head, 2 of the bullets missed me and 2 hit me. And I
Wow.
didn't know where they had gone because I couldn't tell. There was just too much blood. The first one just felt like a bat over the head, but the second one, I didn't know what was going on.
At that point, and nobody knows what's going on except
Right,
God, right?
right. So he kind of put some stuff around me, and he got in the front of the van and he started driving. And so I had about somewhere between a half an hour and an hour to think about this because I didn't know where the hell we were or where we were going. And I was just contemplating, going, okay, here I am, nice guy, being nice to people, being nice to this guy, and then suddenly being near dead, and now I'm going to a hospital. It was quite confusing, frankly. And finally, the van pulled over and stopped, and the lights were turned off, and the engine was turned off. And I realized we're not near a hospital because there were no bright lights. And there was silence for a minute. Then he walked back with a gun in his hand, and he sat down kind of next to me, and it was kind of a hang down position. And he said, I can't take you to the hospital, man. I have to kill you. And I went, oh, why is that? Always good to be curious. The curiosity is a really good quality in situations like that. And he said, because if I take you to the hospital, they'll put me back in jail. I can't go back to jail, man. And I suddenly realized, oh, not only is this a crazy person with a gun, it's a ex-con crazy person with a gun. That kind of elevated everything. At that point, I said, well, I don't, maybe they won't take you to the hospital. Anyway, that began an 8-hour conversation.
Wow. So you're shot in the head, you're bleeding. The dude is, whether he's demonically possessed, crazy, just pure evil, he's struggling. There's a part of humanity that you tapped into in your friendship, and then you're bleeding for 4 hours. I mean, sorry, 8 hours, plus
Yeah.
that 1 hour drive. So this is just an insane scenario. What's going on next?
Yes, well, first of all, the bleeding kind of stopped, and when I felt my head trying to feel the bullet holes, I just felt matted hair and sticky blood, so that it stopped dripping, and so I felt intact. I felt like I'm whole. There's nothing missing here. Partway through the conversation, about 8 hours, I was in this cramped position. I said, "Yeah, I'd really like to get out and stretch." And so he said, "Okay, don't try anything funny." I was, "Don't worry, I'm not going to try anything funny." And so I got out of the van, stretched up, and by this time morning had broken, and he pointed down to a pond down a hill. And so I started walking to the pond with him behind me. I thought, well, he could shoot me in the back and push me into the water. I felt invincible at that point. I was still filled with that golden light of love and compassion. And so I wasn't afraid at any point of death or of anything. And so I washed off the blood from my hands and my face, and I stood and turned to him, and he looked at me funny and he said, "What would you do if I handed you this gun?" And he kind of held it out to me. And I said, "I'd throw it out there in the water." And he said, "You wouldn't shoot me? You wouldn't try to kill me?" I said, "No, why would I do that? I've got my life, you've got yours. We're okay." And then he looked at me really strangely. He said, "Man, you are the weirdest person I've ever met." I thought to myself, I'm probably the weirdest person you will ever meet in your life. But we walked back up to the van and continued to talk, trying to figure out how are we going to get out of this situation. He didn't want to kill me, but he didn't want to go back to jail. And so we began negotiating and trying to find our way through. And I also got him to tell me about his background, about why he ended up in this situation. And so I was a curious listener, really listening deeply to his story. And everybody wants to be listened to, everybody has a story that they want to tell. And at some point, we finally reached a negotiation in which we agreed that I would not turn him in and he would never do anything like that again. And we shook on it. And we drove to a place that he knew. He got out of the van, taking his duffel bags and suitcases and boxes with him. And we shook hands again. I was covered with blood. The people who were waiting for the bus kind of looked at me like, "Oh, holy shit," you know. But I walked back to the van and drove myself to the hospital. And the emergency room doc, was cleaning me up, and he said, "You're a lucky man." I went, "Well, I'm a blessed man." And he said, "You have to make a police report." And I said, "Yeah, I know." And walked out of the van, and I kept my agreement. And I believe he kept his as well.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, on that, we're going to take a quick break to hear from one of our affiliates, and we're going to come back with Lion Goodman, hear more about his story, hear more about the killer side right after this. Hello, friends. I am so thankful we're listening to this episode together with Lion. Before we go any further and hear about him surviving being shot at 4 times and hit in the head twice, I wanted to just take a special break and say thank you to our affiliate sponsor, MyPillow. You guys might think that MyPillow is an affiliate and they give us a small portion so we promote them, but that is not the case. We promote MyPillow because they're an amazing quality company with over 250 products. They generously give you 30 to 80% off everything you order with promo code REMARKABLE to help support our podcast. Then you support their organization, which supports God in America. But you know what else you support? Yourself. You're getting super high quality products, whether it's pillows, sheets, blankets, slippers, mattress pads, mattresses. There's so much at mypillow.com. Just use promo code REMARKABLE and enjoy 30 to 80% off everything you buy, every time you buy. And right now, there's even free shipping for orders over $75. So you will win. Your family will win. You can buy stuff for yourself. You can buy stuff for gifts. And if you're not happy 100%, they have a full money back warranty. So this is a win-win-win-win situation. So check out mypillow.com/remarkable, shop, buy your Christmas gifts early. And now let's get back to this remarkable episode with our friend, Lion Goodman. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this episode with our friend, Lion Goodman. So, Lion, it's the 70s. People are picking up hitchhikers. You pick somebody up. He wasn't even hitchhiking. He was pretending to be broken down, maybe really broken down. You spend 3 days with him. The dude shoots you twice, tries to shoot you 4 times. The psychopath calls you the weirdest person he's ever met. You guys come to a negotiation where you're like, drop me off at the hospital, let me live, or just let me live. I won't tell anybody who you are. He lets you go. You go to the hospital. You're getting care. And from there, where does the story go? How do you not tell the police how you got shot twice in the head?
Well, I had made an agreement with him, and I wanted to keep my part of the agreement because I wanted him to keep his part of the agreement. He agreed to never do anything like that again. Now, I don't know what happened to him after that. People often ask, "Well, did you ever see him again?" No, I didn't. But I kind of followed him psychically for about 5 years, and I believe he kept his part of the agreement. I believe he sort of got his life together and became a straight citizen. So it felt complete, and we were both transformed that day. I was transformed because I was near death and out of body and recognized I am not my body. He was transformed by attempting to kill someone who took kindness and compassion as the root rather than anger and upset. I've told this story many times. It's been published widely. There was a movie made about it. And my favorite thing was telling people in San Quentin prison. I've lectured there many times, and I've told them this story. And the prisoners are quite amazed. They're like, "You didn't shoot him. You didn't. I would have killed the guy." You know? But it's a lesson in compassion. It's a lesson in how do you react to violence in a way that protects yourself, but doesn't have to wreak revenge on the other person and create even more damage. So from there, I didn't want to sell on the road anymore. I didn't want to pick up hitchhikers anymore. So I got a job as a headhunter, which is kind of ironic after having
Ironic, right? A
done
headhunter.
this.
Well, hold on a second. We can't go past yet. I got to ask a couple questions. So the police, were they like, dude, you got to tell us? Or were they just like, okay, that's fine? What was their attitude towards all this?
Well, I never went to the police because that was my agreement.
But
The,
didn't the hospital
the,
call the police or the hospital just be like,
no,
whatever?
the docs just said, you know, you have to report this to the police. And I said, yes, I know.
Oh, and they didn't call. It was a different
Right,
day and time.
right.
Got you, got you, got you. And then, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, you're in LA during the 70s. There was a lot of serial killers and mass murders. Did you ever look the guy up and like look through some mug shots? Like, was that like a killer that's like on the Murder Death Kill channel now, and you were the lucky survivor, blessed survivor? I
Well,
mean,
that's a possibility, but I really do believe in my heart that he actually straightened up and he never did anything like that again. I really believe that he kept his part of the agreement.
oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. There was a delay. Go finish what you were saying, sir.
Just that we both went through a true transformation. He was a different person on the other side of that experience than he was on the first side. And part of it was that he got to tell his story to someone who was really interested in listening. That his father had been drunk and beat him up, that he failed in school and the kids called him names. You know, the traumas that he went through led him to a life of crime. And my life, the traumas I went through and the things that I experienced led to my life as a kind of a, you know, middle class hippie salesman. So, but the beliefs that we created in our lives created who we were in life. And that incident changed our beliefs. My belief is like, oh, I'm not my body. I'm something else. I'm spirit, right? His belief was that I have to commit crimes in order to survive. And that he realized that he didn't have to. So we both changed our beliefs and our orientation toward the world and other people in that incident. And that's what got me interested, really even more interested in transformation. Like what, how can we transform people without shooting them in the head?
Yeah, no, man. That's actually what I was going to ask you when I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to ask you about what was his story. You said you guys swapped stories and he shared with you his life. And so you said he was picked on, abused by his dad, and he just went to a life of crime.
Yeah, he got involved in drugs and then drug dealing, and then he escaped with some money of the drug dealers, and then they were hunting him down, and he had to leave LA, and he stole his dad's money and gun, you know, to get out of LA, and then his car broke down, and then he was desperate. I'm desperate, and he actually had decided to kill whoever stopped to help him.
Which always boggled my mind. Why would you kill the person who helps you? That
I
happens
don't
so
know.
often.
I don't know, but that was his decision. I was surprised to hear that because I had been traveling with him for 3 days. I thought I was psychic and I had no clue that he had this agenda, you know. And I finally said, well, why? He told me that he had pulled out his gun many times during those 3 days and nights to shoot me, but he couldn't. And I said, why not? He said, because you kept being nice to me. Nobody had ever been that nice to me before.
Hmm.
And then I said, okay, well, then how did you decide finally to shoot me? He said, well, I decided the stuff was worth it. And I looked around my van. This was a big van filled with stuff, jewelry, gift items. I thought, well, maybe you could get $5,000 for this whole thing, you know. And then I realized that's what my life is worth, 5,000 bucks. And that was kind of a shock, but it's good to know how much your life is worth. Like somebody is willing to trade my life for 5 grand. You know, it's like, okay, well, at least I got a realistic price.
Man. So, okay. So now you have this experience. Was there any damage from the gunshots, or did it just God protected you and went around your skull? What happened there? What was the medical condition that was
Ah,
left?
so so the doctor said, you know, both bullets bounced off your skull. They grazed you.
Did he use a 22 maybe? What
Yeah,
caliber do you know?
fortunately, it was a 22 because if he had used a 45, I wouldn't be here to tell you the story.
Yeah.
And apparently I have a hard aura because so but one of the key pieces here is that I was so relaxed and so in acceptance of dying, and so with God, and that God light, that when the fourth bullet came, if I had had any tension in my neck, like from anger or upset, it probably would have blown the top of my skull off. But I was so relaxed that it actually pushed my head over like this and allowed the bullet to glance off. So that's one of the keys to survival is relax. That's why drunk people, when they get into auto accidents, don't get as much damage as people who aren't drunk because they're so relaxed. They're just kind of rolling with it. So I was relaxed. I rolled with it, and I saved myself.
Yeah, that's amazing. So that's remarkable. That's why you're on the show, right?
Yes.
So now you survived this. Did you think God must have a plan for me because clearly I'm not dead? Was
Oh,
that a thought that
yes.
crossed your mind?
Oh, yes. I, in fact, asked God, I said, okay, God, now what? And I waited for an answer and I got an answer. And this is what it said. Now what? And I went, oh, shit. Pardon my language. It's like, I got to figure out what's next. Like, you're not going to teach me like a burning bush telling me exactly what to do. And basically, God was saying, you're responsible for your life. And I started taking responsibility. I got a job. I started making money. I got good at what I was doing. I met a woman who became my wife, started a family. So I took responsibility for my life. And before that, I was really just drifting. So that's what God said to me. I call it the echo effect. Sometimes you just get your own voice back to you when you talk to God.
All right. So now you're moving forward. Where does your life go from there, Lion? Bring us through to today.
Yeah, well, I became a headhunter sort of by accident, because somebody offered me a job in an employment agency. So I was in the employment business as a headhunter. I eventually worked for a more professional organization and started my own company, called it the Goodman Group, and we specialized in healthcare informatics because that was the area I had been working in. And I built that up to $1 million executive search firm with employees and all that. And then the dot bomb hit when the all the .com companies fell apart. And that ended my career in that field because that was all of our clients were .com companies. And so then I didn't know what to do because I'd been doing that for 25 years. I also had a wife and a child and responsibilities. So I was kind of flailing around going, now what? Same question. Now
And
what?
this is the mid 90s now. What year are we at now?
Yeah, we're the end of the 90s, the beginning of the 2000s.
2000s.
Yeah,
Okay.
2002. And my girlfriend at the time, I'd gotten divorced and all that. So my girlfriend at the time said, "Why don't you be a coach?" And I said, "I don't know anything about coaching." And she said, "Of course you do. You've been coaching executives for 25 years. You've got all this self-development work done. Just apply it." And she said, "By the way, I don't want to coach anymore. I'm going to give you my clients." And I went, okay. So that's how I became a coach. She handed me about a dozen clients and I started working with them and had great results. And so that was the beginning of my coaching career. And the standard coaching that we're taught to do is, where are you now? What do you want to achieve? And how are we going to get you there? And every once in a while, it's what's in your way. The problem that I saw is that that wasn't effective because what was holding people back were the programs that they were carrying forward from the past. And that if we didn't clear those out, they couldn't move forward. They'd procrastinate, they'd get distracted, they'd start a project and not finish it. It's like all the human behaviors we know of that prevent us from being as successful as we could be. Those kept coming up again and again. So I said, all right, we've got to solve that problem. What's their source? Where do they come from? Where do those beliefs come from? And that's what got me interested in beliefs even deeper. It's like, okay, there's something that happened to that kid that made them decide, I'll never accomplish anything. And here we are as an adult, and he's still got the same belief and he can't accomplish anything. So then I started applying everything I had learned to those early programs, and suddenly people could move forward. So I said, all right, that's what I'm doing here. That's my job, is to clear the past so people can move forward. And I began to teach the technology that I developed to others. And today I have more than 600 graduates in 45 countries around the world for the Clear Beliefs coach training, and the method is called the Clear Beliefs method of trauma-informed therapeutic coaching. So it's somewhere between therapy and coaching, because the coaching organizations say we don't deal with the past, we leave that to the psychologists, which is the problem. Because unless you clear up the past, you can't move forward.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I mean, it absolutely makes sense. So what some people are listening, they're like, okay, well, how do I try this? How do I get started? What's something they can try at home to start the process of healing or clearing out those false beliefs?
Well, the first place is to start is always awareness. And in my free ebooks, I give away a process called belief self-diagnosis. And basically, it's a way to take your subconscious beliefs and get them out of you and on paper so you can see them in front of you, both the positive and negative ones. And then you can go, oh, this is what's running the machinery underneath my conscious mind. And then they can take the next step and do a session with me or with one of my trained coaches, and they can actually have the experience of transforming a belief. And when you transform a belief in the way that we do it, which is multidimensionally, life looks different the next day. You're not the same person. Your identity changes because we're working at the identity level, the level at which who we believe we are. So when we do that, the person has a direct experience. It's like, wow, that thing that's been bugging me my whole life isn't there anymore. I'll give you a couple of examples. A multimillionaire came to me and he said, look, I'm very good at making money, but I've also lost a lot of money. I make a lot, and I lose a lot, I make a lot, and I lose a lot. I want to figure out why, and I want to stop it. Okay, great. So in just a few sessions, we got to a place where he remembered something that happened to him when he was about 2 years old. And he was walking down the street with his mom, streets of New York, holding her hand, and he looks down and he sees a shiny penny. And he gets excited and he reaches down for it. And his mother jerks him back and says, "Don't touch that, it's dirty." And he suddenly realized that the reason he couldn't hold on to his money was because mother said it's dirty and he shouldn't touch it. He was able to make millions, but he couldn't hold on to it because he wasn't supposed to touch it or have it. So there's an example of, one single belief, an early childhood experience that influenced his whole life.
So
And
now
there
he's
was,
aware of the problem. What
yeah.
would be the next step to clear it?
Well, we did my process, the Clear Beliefs method, and cleared that experience. What we did is we went back in time, and he, as an adult, picked up that little child and said, "It's okay. It's not the money, it's your mommy's fear." And so money's fine. Good to have money. Here's some extra pennies you can have. And mommy's just a little confused and she made you scared. And now the inner child that had that experience has a different experience. It's called memory reconsolidation in psychology. The memory system can be deconsolidated, taken apart, and reconsolidated in a different way. And so that's the principle we use, and that's why our system is so effective.
Nice. So people are listening. We'll put links in the show notes. But what's the best way for somebody to reach you or get that free ebook or continue the conversation, Lion?
My website is liongoodman.com, Lion, Goodman. And so that's the easiest way to find out all the things I'm doing, including my coaching, my training, my free ebooks, my videos and podcasts are there. So that's the easiest way for people to get to know me.
Okay, awesome. So now you're figuring out I'm a coach, you're helping people, you find this way to clear the limiting beliefs. And where does your life go from there? Bring us through to today.
Well, first of all, when I began sharing this technology with others, I got high because it was working for them. Not only did it work for me, but it also worked for them. They were coming back and saying, "Oh my God, I'm changing people's lives." And I was filled with purpose. Like, oh, that's my purpose, is to teach people this technology that I spent 45 years figuring out. And so I've now been teaching for 20 years, and my life is filled with meaning and purpose, and I love it. and it's expanded around the world. So I feel really good. I feel like I'm doing my dharma. The dharma in the Asian cultures means, your sole purpose. So that's fantastic, and I get to help others, and then that help uh, ripples out to other people's lives, and I get to enjoy being the source of that.
Excellent, excellent. And then people can go to your website to reach you. What does the average program look like? Not in the sense of all the little details, but average. Some people got a lot of baggage to take care of. Some people have a few things, like that guy had 1 penny. I'm sure he had other stuff, but you know what I mean? Some things are faster. But what's the average coaching period?
Well, first, we have to recognize that we have tens of thousands of beliefs in us because, for example, language is a belief structure. Our experience was formed into beliefs, conclusions, assumptions, but most of them are neutral. Like you can look at a cat and say, that is a cat, and you don't have any emotional charge on that unless you're allergic to cats, right? It's the beliefs that impact us, that cause us to feel a certain way. There's something wrong with me. I'm a sinner. I'll never be perfect. I have to perform in order to get love or attention. I have to pretend to be someone else because I'm no good. Those are the beliefs that are at the core of our personality that are driving our negative behavior, because from each of those conclusions came an adaptive strategy around it. Okay, well, my dad's been beating me. It must be me. I must be a piece of crap. So I have to hide that I'm a piece of crap and pretend to be big and strong and powerful, and I'll become a bully in order to protect that shame that I have inside. So there's a sequence that creates an adaptive strategy of behavior. Now that man is 45 or 50 years old, and he's finding that he can't beat up people anymore, and that he has to face the shame, the original shame that was there at the beginning, in order to clear that whole stack of behaviors. So that's part of it. So the answer to your question is, it depends on how much a person has. If they've got a lot of trauma, that takes more time to clear, but we can clear it one piece at a time. If they have a lot of negative beliefs, we can, it might take 8 weeks, it might take 6 months. Most people work with me for about 6 months and then they're done. One guy worked with me for 10 years, and he went from being a product manager to VP of a multi-billion-dollar company. And so he did fine, just continuing to clear what was in the way, clear what was in the way, clear what was in the way. So it depends on how far you want to go. And if my training is for coaches, therapists, healers, people who want to be coaches, social workers, doctors, and that's a 6-month training where you get certified as a therapeutic coach.
And then do you work your coaches through the program first to make sure they don't have a bunch of clearing to do?
Simultaneously. So part of the training is that you become the client with one of the other students as the coach, and you work your own stuff. So most people say, oh my God, I had no idea I would get this much transformation out of the course. So yeah, it's a simultaneous process.
Beautiful. So
Yeah.
anything else between your birth and today in your life that we missed? I'm sure there's a lot, but I'm saying, is there anything you want to talk about? Or is there any other exercises or any other thoughts you want to leave with our audience?
Yes. In fact, I'd love to just take the audience through an experience so they can get a direct experience of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that would be great. Let's do it.
So will you participate?
Sure.
Great. Okay, so this is a way to find out that our beliefs create our experience. A lot of people say that, like, what does it really mean? So, David, I'd like you to close your eyes. I'd like everyone who's listening to close their eyes for a minute and feel what it feels like to hold the belief, there's something wrong with me. And just say it to yourself as if it's 100% true. There's probably another part of your brain that says, no, 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 that's not true. But just say, sit down, I'm doing an experiment. There's something wrong with me. And how does that make you feel in your body? What's your body saying when you believe that?
My head feels heavy in the front and sad.
Mhm.
And I feel like all the energy is just like going out. Like I just want to go to bed and quit.
Okay, beautiful. So if you were in a clothing store and you tried on an outfit of clothing that felt that way, just immediately take it off and toss it aside, right? So just take this belief off and toss it aside, just like clothing. that you're wearing. Take a breath. Okay, now I'll give you a different belief to try on. So try on the belief, I am a sacred and worthy being, and feel what it feels like to believe that. Now, how does that feel?
Feels good. Feels like my posture's a little straighter.
Mhm.
When I breathe, it's like cooler in my head. My head feels lighter.
Good. Now you're welcome to take that belief off and toss it aside, or you can keep it because you get to be in charge of your beliefs. So if you like the belief, keep it on. And you've got thousands of beliefs. You can open your eyes and rejoin me. So we're in charge of our beliefs if we take charge of our beliefs. If we don't, then it's the beliefs that we got in our subconscious mind are running us. So the process is all about bringing up the beliefs that are in there, recognizing them, and then clearing them one by one until you're free and clear, and you're now operating as a creator in your life instead of as a victim.
So what happens when someone believes it so deeply, they're like, how can I get rid of that? It's true. I'm blank.
Well, that's what the process is for, because most of us believe those beliefs completely. And what we do to is help the people recognize, look, this is a belief you took on. It's not true. It was never true. You're a divine spark of light, and you took on these clothes, these beliefs along the way because of circumstances that are understandable. It's all understandable when you understand psychology. But it's just a belief. It's not who you are. You have beliefs, but you are not your beliefs. So that's a fundamental piece of what we do, is to help the self recognize, oh yeah, this is just something I took on, and if I took it on, I can take it off.
That's a great visual. That's a great like way to look at it.
Mhm.
Okay. So if someone wants to continue the conversation, is the best way to reach out to you your website?
Yep, liongoodman.com. There's a link there to set up a 15-minute free consultation with me. I love talking to people. I love people with questions or if they want to explore working with me.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's like everybody is who they are for a reason. And then it's like saying if there's a wife that commits adultery 80 times and she steals and she's a terrible wife, you're not saying she's necessarily is that, but that's how she behaved because she was wearing that false belief. And she can take that off, confess it to God, get it right, and move on.
That's possible. And there are people who are stuck in their beliefs and they believe that that's who they are. They've identified with their beliefs of this is who I am, this is what I need, and this is how I'm going to get it. Now, it doesn't make it right, doesn't make any of it right. It doesn't excuse bad behavior. But if the person wants to change, they can change. And that's the key. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to go back to your childhood for a second because I'd say the average person, even if they didn't have violence in their background, if someone was holding a gun to their head, they'd fight to get away. They'd struggle, they'd fight. Was your background in your childhood real loving and gentle? Was it violent? Like what?
Yeah, yeah, there was no violence in my family. There was more silence, which is can be as violent to a kid as violence.
Yeah, the
You know,
silent treatment can be more brutal than taking a beating, 100%.
exactly, exactly. So there were a couple of factors. One is in my youth, I became a pacifist and a hippie. I identified with the hippie ethic, be nice to people and love everybody, and aren't we cool and groovy? So, so that was kind of at my core. But also in this particular incident, I was a sitting duck. I couldn't move. I was squashed down in a position. I had no options. There was nothing I could defend myself with. I couldn't jump up. He was 11 feet away. His hand was on the back of a car seat, and I knew I was a dead duck, not just a sitting duck, but a dead duck. So there wasn't an option to suddenly get up and rush him because I would be dead by now.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, after going through the scenario, if you revolted, this is like one of the rare situations where you probably would end up dead instead of just doing what you did. It's hard for my mind to wrap around because I did not grow up in a pacifistic home or
Yeah.
environment. Yeah, man. So anything else you want to share with our audience line before we wrap up this episode for today?
I just want to reinforce this thing I said a minute ago, which is that you have beliefs and you are not your beliefs. They're just appendages that you put on, they're conclusions you came to, they're like the clothes in your closet that you put on from time to time or wear all the time. You took them on at some level. Sometimes they were given to you, they were indoctrinated or put on you, and some you took on yourself, but they were all accepted in some way. And so therefore you can take them off. You can change your beliefs and change your life.
That actually brings up another question. There's a lie that's in society that says you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I don't believe that. I believe anybody can change. I think it does get harder to change as you get older. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, if you look at the word belief, there's the LIE is in the middle of it. So every belief is a lie in the sense that it's just a temporary conclusion that we used for a good purpose. Humans are flexible. Our brains are complex, and there's this thing called neuroplasticity. We can change our brain. It's a constantly moving, changing thing. Every time you learn something new, you've got a different brain. So it just depends on your motivation. You can't I can't change your beliefs, but I can guide you to change your own. Because if I made you change your beliefs, I'm just indoctrinating you the same way people did your whole life. So we don't do indoctrination in my field. We ask people, what would you prefer to believe? What would you like to believe? What belief would get you the experience in life that you want? And so when a person decides to change their beliefs themselves, then it sticks because it's their decision. It's not somebody putting a belief onto them or into them.
Yeah. Um, Sometimes though, when you ask people, what do you want? They don't even know. So
True.
how do you lead them into there?
Well, first of all, there's a story behind I don't know. Usually that's because they were not allowed to have needs or wants or desires or to get them fulfilled in childhood. So they stopped wanting things or they stopped feeling things. So there's always a story behind those kinds of responses. Like, really, what happened to you that you don't even know what you want? There's a story and a belief there. So we just investigate whatever comes up.
Interesting. Man, there's so much to this and so many questions because just that statement, how many people say they're talking like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. It's like, yeah, you do know.
Yeah,
So
I
for the
like to ask, well, if who should we ask if you don't know?
so for someone who struggles with that, what do you recommend to them to start off? Like that you close your eyes and do the shirt illustration? Is there a way to get through that? I don't know, to dig down to the core, not just a symptom.
Well, we have many different techniques. I teach 20 different techniques for this process as part of our training. And one thing we do is we feel that body sensation. It's like, okay, if you had this, how would your body feel? If you had this, how would your body feel? Which one do you like better? Oh, I like this one a lot better. Well, that's the one you want. So it's really just helping people get in touch with themselves and increasing their own self-awareness so that they can know. They can find out. For example, women have feelings like all the time. They're just in tune with their feelings. They ask a man, like, how do you feel? And the answer is, I don't know, because we don't know where to look. We've never been trained where to look. So I teach people, both men and women, how to look into their body because our body's a huge information superhighway. And it's giving us information all the time unless we block it off. And so us as boys, big boys don't cry. Okay, I'll cut off my feelings. No pain, no gain. Okay, I won't feel pain. All of these admonitions that we get in childhood cut us off from our own knowing, our own inner knowing. And we just have to reconnect those things by taking the blocks out of the way.
Huh, so interesting. So interesting. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today we've spent some great time with Lion. Lion, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, if any closing thoughts again before we wrap this up for today?
Change your beliefs and you can change your life.
All right, that's a great way to put it. Ladies and gentlemen, like our slogan says, don't just listen to great content from our guests like Lion, but do it, repeat the good each day. So you can have a great life in this world, but more importantly, an eternity to come. So I'm David Pasqualone. This is our good friend, remarkable friend, Lion Goodman. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And don't forget to reach out to Lion, check out his website, download his free ebook. And if we can help you in any way, just let us know. Lion, thank you again, my friend.
Thank you.
All right. Ciao. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you in the next episode. And don't forget to forward this to someone it can help.
The Remarkable People Podcast. Check it out. The Remarkable People Podcast. Listen, do, repeat. For life. The Remarkable People Podcast.